Well, hello and welcome to the ADA Shop Talk podcast. I'm your host, Paul Klein. And if you are an ADA coordinator, government official, architect, or accessibility specialist trying to understand this great world of the ADA, then you are in the right place. The ADA Shop Talk podcast is brought to you by BlueDag. Check out BlueDag's Transition Plan Builder and Inspection Suite over at BlueDag.com. And today I got for you a free-for-all Wednesday. So as I prep these shows, sometimes I, try to think of topics and guests and all that kind of stuff. But there's actually been some kind of new topics that came out recently, via email. So I was going through my email box. I was thinking, some of these things would be kind of cool. So, I don't know, it might be something I do a little more often, but it's just you and I, and you can always certainly send in questions to me at pklein@bluedag.com, and we'll get some questions answered for you. So I might answer a couple of questions that came in via email this week, but let me see here. It's like I say, it's a free-for-all. So let me start with, for those of you that are in the ADA Shop Talk community, or on the email blast that I do the ADA Shop Talk question of the week. And so this week's question is, a blank is an exterior or interior way of passage provided for pedestrian travel. And the multiple guess is either a circulation path, pedestrian passageway, horizontal exit, or exit route. So if you want to answer that, go over to adashoptalk.com, join the community. So many of you are already in there, but yeah, a blank is an exterior or interior way of passage provided for pedestrian travel. So circulation path, pedestrian passageway, horizontal exit, or exit route. And if you like those questions, you can go in the community, and it's free, doesn't cost anything, and send those out every week. And I try to keep them mostly ADA focused or Title II kind of based, generic. But I do throw in some California every now and then, and I may throw in some other state stuff or some ANSI here and there and so forth. So check that out. And then also we have coming up next week, Thursday, July 18th, our Bring Your Barriers inside. We do a monthly webinar in there. And so come in and join us. Bring your barriers, bring your topics. And it's over Zoom. You can register at the ADA Shop Talk community. And it's July 18th, Thursday, July 18th at 1 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Pacific. So going through my box here, I've got some other cool stuff. There's some training coming up here I think you'll like. One of the ones I saw just come through yesterday, I think it was Sumo has a cool one called Readily Achievable Barrier Removal. And it's July 18th also, 10:30 to 12:30. So it kind of overlaps our webinar. I think both of them are going to be recorded. But yeah, check out Sumo's training coming up there. You can register at her website at Access Compliance Consulting. And she's always a great resource. The other thing that came through was GSA adopts Access Board's public right-of-way accessibility guidelines into enforceable standards. So on July 3rd, the General Service Administration issued a final rule on adopting the Access Board's public right-of-way, or the PROAG, as part of the Architectural Barriers Act. The Architectural Barriers Act is a civil rights law that requires federally constructed and leased facilities and certain facilities constructed or leased with federal funds to be accessible to people with disabilities. GSA standards apply to all facilities subject to the ABA, except for facilities belonging to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the DOD, or the U.S. Postal Service, as they have their own standards. Upon adoption of the PROAG, all new and altered public rights-of-way subject to the ABAS, such as roads in national parks or streets on a Department of Veterans Affairs campus, will be required to comply with technical accessibility requirements. These requirements include accessible features such as minimum sidewalk widths, accessible pedestrian signals, accessible pedestrian loading zones, and accessible on-street parking. So all those guidelines are going to become standards for that public right-of-way, especially if you're receiving, your city or county is receiving those federal funds. They'll be subject to that. And there's some things in there, some gnashing of the teeth that I heard when it talks about the width of sidewalks. I think there might be some more restrictive exceptions that might have been left out of that. I want to dig into that a little bit more, have somebody come on and that can speak to that a little bit more. But check that out. That was just announced by the Access Board, something you want to keep on your radar. And then also, let's see, Cassie out in California, for you California folks, is having the discussion group coming up next week and on August 2nd. So the Cassie discussion group, I believe it's free. Yeah, it's free if you're a Cassie member. And so check that out. That's another resource. I think I'm going to be joining the next one here. I think it's on, I can't remember if it is it's before August 2nd. I think it's July. Bring up my calendar here. It is July 18th at 1:30. So that's at the same time. So we got 3 things happening on the 18th, it looks like. We have the SUMOs class, we have the DSA code discussion group, and we have our monthly webinars. So we always do ours. We could have done ours the following week, I guess, but whatever. It is what it is. But good thing is ours is recorded, so you can join those. I believe all of them are probably recorded, but definitely check those out. And then there's a Fair Housing Act Requirement 5. So the Fair Housing First has been putting out housing stuff, training, the last few weeks. So this is Requirement 5, controls in accessible locations, on July 16th, 10 a.m. to 11:30 Eastern, or 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And it's about 90 minutes, and that's over at Fair Housing First. And another great training there for you. So kind of just a quick free-for-all. I don't know if I think that one's free too, so you can get some CEUs. Check that out. And let me look here. Yeah, there was a cool one here, technical questions. So like I say, this is free-for-all. So I got a couple of questions emailed to me, and I thought I could share them here and cleanse the people who emailed so that I can protect the innocent. So here's a good one that came in. I won't say where it is or who it's from, but it came about. It's a new medical facility for a county, and it says new medical and mental health facility. And a question came up about accessible routes and egress. Our X-ray machine is wall mounted and sticks out more than the allowed 4 inches. But I see the dental lab as an ancillary use to the dental operatory and would consider the accessible route out of this area, starting at the door in the east corridor in the operation room. Would you say that would be okay with more than 4 inches in the operation room? Love your thoughts. So this is one of those classic things that comes up in the medical or, hospitals and clinics and things like that. And that's, there's so much equipment. There's those roll around IVs and machines and all these things that help save lives. And where they go per the ADA standards, a lot of time doesn't mix. And, you have things projecting from walls and so forth. And so in this particular facility, you guys can't see it, but there was a diagram that was emailed in too. And basically I came up with, if you can clearly define the accessible route and circulation path versus an employee workstation or work area. Because as you know, as an employee work area or workstation, you just have to have access to it. So once you're in that area, it's not subject to the standards in terms of reach ranges, counter heights, projections, and things like that. It's just, you got to be able to approach, enter, and exit and get to it. And then it kind of falls under Title I for the reasonable accommodations. This is why in the old days, I always use this as an example, drafting tables could be up at 48 inches for draftsmen or draftswomen that would be, drawing on the old, before computers, if you followed the ADA, you wouldn't be able to do that. It'd have to be done at 34 or 36. So, because that's an employee work area. back of house in a restaurant, in a kitchen, the microwaves and the sauces. You look at a quick serve McDonald's or those things, they got buns up real high above reach ranges and counter heights that are all over the place, and dishwashers and pan washers and all those kinds of things, because you just have to have access to that area. And so that's how I look at this in a medical facility, is I would kind of look at 203.9 and 2 in the ADAS and look at that exception, the general exceptions. It talks about employee work areas having access to it. But if this is an area where the public is using, it's like a corridor that goes to the restrooms in the hospital or the clinic, or where patients are going to be meeting and it's used by patients or the public, then that's different. And that's where the gray area, you have to look at that and draw that line in the sand. So you've got to make that call. If it's clearly an employee area or back of house area, you probably will be okay. Or you can make a decision, especially for you architects out there, just as a best practice, to apply that 4-inch limitation everywhere. But as you know, in the medical field, with all those gadgets and gizmos and hand sanitizers and glove dispensers and all the things that go with saving lives, sometimes there's more equipment than space. And so, you end up having some projections or something like that. And so you've got to be careful. So that was an interesting one that came in that I thought you might find interesting. Another one that came in was, this one was, okay, yeah, this was a good one too. This is another county, another city, Title II entity. Says, I have a project which is construction of a gravel parking lot at a trailhead. The trail is existing and no improvements are planned for it. It is not designed to be accessible. The gravel parking lot includes about 20 parking spaces and is accessed directly from a county maintained road. I have a question that I have requested that a van parking space be included in the scope. Is that the correct call? So hopefully your what do you call it? Your radar's going off and you're thinking about that. So it's a trailhead. So think about it. It's a county, many of you have parks, trails and things like that. Very common in cities and counties. This particular is a county. And so you've got a trailhead going into a hiking trail or into the forest or something, very common. And they have 20 parking spaces right at the trailhead off the county maintained road. So as part of your Title II program services and activities obligation as the county, this falls under a program, service, and activity. You've provided 20 parking stalls for everybody else. And so if you say, oh no, you don't have to, that's a gravel lot, you don't have to worry about it. Good old boy, you just excluded people with disabilities, which is discrimination and a violation of your Title II obligation. Now you don't have to provide parking. And some of you might be thinking, well, what if it's not striped? Well, if it's provided and intended, even if it's not striped and it's just a gravel area that's been surfaced to allow vehicles to park there and it's clearly intended as that, that's where you need to meet your obligation. If it's a dirt lot that everybody just parks illegally, then the county probably ought to put no parking up there and make sure it's enforced from traffic enforcement and don't allow people to park there. But if they want people to come and enjoy the trailhead, which is probably the more likely thing, and realistically so, they're providing some parking, 20 stalls, well, now you need to have at least one van accessible stall. And that's making your program services and activities. You as the entity chose to have the trail, therefore it has to comply. And if you can't make it comply, then you get rid of it, you modify it, or you move it to an accessible location that will comply. And so maybe there's another trailhead nearby. Maybe there's another one at the other end that is at a paved lot. There's some of those things that you can consider, but you can't just say, well, it's a gravel lot, so we're not going to worry about it as the county. You can do that, but you're setting the county up, you ADA coordinators, for a phone call, a DOJ investigation, lawsuit, lack of federal funds, discrimination, bad press, and gray hair. So not a good practice. So fortunately, this particular staff person of this county was on the right page, and so I was able to confirm their gut feeling, if you will, and they're working with the whoever's involved in it. I don't know all the particulars, but basically a quick email was able to get them pointed in the right direction. So that was an interesting one I thought you might like. And then lastly, this one's a little bit more complicated, but I'll also throw it at you here. This came in, and so let's see, this is a private community park. So says, "Hi, Paul, we have an issue that has me stumped. A group is proposing a private community park, fenced and gated with supervised operation of all users and activities. They are questioning the need for accessible route connecting all features and activities areas on the site. Would such facility be exempt from providing this?" So this is one of those weird areas in all of this world of accessibility that's counterintuitive in some ways. And so the way I like to attack these, let's back up and think about this. First off, it's a private community park. So the first question we have to ask when applying all of the different standards, and then none of us know where this is, but it could be anywhere in the United States. It could be on any kind of a facility, city, county. They're claiming it's private, so it's probably not city or county. And then if we apply the ADA or the ADAS, it applies to public accommodations or maybe fair housing if it falls under apartments, but there's no mention of apartments. It's probably kind of like a gated community, like a Del Webb kind of facility where they have a private park that's not a park that's allowed for the general public to use. You have to be a member of that subdivision. However, because it's a subdivision and not multifamily, it doesn't fall under fair housing. Then you go back, well, is it a public accommodation? Well, it's not if it's gated and you have to live there to be able to use it. Okay, because it's a private subdivision. It's not open to the public. Doesn't meet the definition of public accommodation. So that's where we have to fit this has to fit somewhere. Number one, if it is, we're saying it's private, so I start with the Title III piece, and under the 2010 ADS, ANSI, and the IBC, it's got to be a public accommodation, meaning open to the public in order for it to be regulated. And in this case, if it's just a private gated park inside of a private, HOA kind of facility, then it's not used by the public and it's not by definition a public accommodation. Then I would say, okay, well, if it's not that, it doesn't fall under multifamily. Well, if there's no apartments or common use associated with multifamily, then that's out the door. So fair housing's out the door. The ADAS is out the door. It's not public housing either in terms of an agency or a city's housing obligation. Then that gets thrown out. Then lastly, is it part of a Title II entity? In other words, is it getting city, state, or county funds of any sort? Fourth, is it getting federal funds to develop this private park? If all of that is no, then ABA doesn't apply. None of the federal 504, because if it's all just private, like in a Del Webb, then this is one of those gray, or what you'd call a hole in the code, or that's basically becomes unregulated. As soon as they open it up to the public, though, they allow people to rent the community center in the park for barbecues, for weddings. Boom, public accommodation changes the obligation. But again, if it's truly a gated private community park only for the residents of the subdivision, it's not part of a city, county. It's not deeded to the city or county. City, county has nothing to do with it in terms of tax credits, grants, federal funding, road improvements, or any of that kind of stuff. It's all truly a private development. Then, unfortunately, it's one of those gray areas in the code that is not addressed by the technical standards. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean the owner, the architect, the contractor shouldn't provide access as a best practice. And that's what it kind of comes down to is as a best practice. Absolutely. They should think about that and connecting the amenities, the parking, to the play apparatuses and things like that, because you don't want to be accused of discriminatory design practices. And if something changes, the gate gets torn out in 10 years and it becomes adopted by the city or whatever, you're already one step ahead to make that acquisition or that process, much easier. And so I think it's short-sighted on a designer, owner, or somebody saying, hey, let's not do this because it's not in the code. However, as a code official or an accessibility specialist or somebody who's overseeing that, it's also hard to require it because there's no code path or clear way to make that. It's the right thing to do, and sometimes that doesn't fly very well with owners and architects. I get it. But the architect, I would think, if they're half good, is going to want to do what they call best practices and go, yes, this isn't required. However, we're going to go ahead and go above and beyond, show a good faith effort. That way, if we're ever challenged or accused of discriminatory design practices, we can show that we've made a good faith effort to try to make the amenities accessible. And people might live there with disabilities, and it just increases your pool of marketability for the project. So there's a lot of other reasons that you should do it or why you should do it. But looking at it from a straight federal accessibility, ADAS, ABA, ANSI, building code, accessibility, regulatory standard code, there is potentially nothing there that would require it. One of those gray areas in our code. So anyway, I'd be interested if you have any other thoughts on that. I know there's some case studies out there, private clubs and things like that, exemptions in the ADA, and there may be more information in there, but it's a 2-letter email I got. So that's all the information I had. So I responded to something similar, explaining what I just outlined to you. So hopefully that helps you. If you ever run across anything like that, that's a private community and park and so forth. And yeah, that's kind of some free for all stuff for you today. And good stuff. And hope you're out there doing a great job. Had a great 4th and all that stuff. I know I did. Got some rest time and a lot of downtime over the last weekend. And so we're back in the pocket working away. I'm going to be traveling tomorrow when this comes out. So I'll probably be on an airplane or out in a parking lot when you're listening to this, which is cool the way all this works. But come join the webinar next Thursday, the 18th. I'd love to see you there. We're going to be doing the free for all kind of what would you call it? Bring Your Barriers. That's what it's going to be. Bring Your Barriers, and that's going to be on July 18th at 11 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock Central Time. So bring your barriers, bring your topic. If anything I spoke about here was confusing, you can jump on and we can hash it out right on that call. Victor will be there, so I'd love to see you. So that's all I got there. If you haven't already subscribed to the ADA Shop Talk podcast, please do so. Share it with your friends. If you like what we're doing here, let me know. You can email me at pklein@bluedag.com and get out there and rock your ADA efforts. And remember, let's all work to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Take care, and until next week, have a great day. Bye-bye.